So, hey, everybody. I'm delighted to have a chance to be with you this afternoon. And so I'm continuing with this sequence of meditations um, called the Lam Rim, or the stages of the path. And I just looked at the list that I'd put on the email and the website, and I realized that I'd missed one. So clearly, I some combination of rusty and didn't take enough time. So the meditation on atomic habits we'll be doing next week, and then this week we'll focus on practice of building inner protection. So building inner protection. This traditional name for this meditation is Refuge Practice. So building inner protection or refuge. All of these meditations that I've been doing in general, I framed these all as secular meditation practices. I don't think I can frame this one as a secular meditation practice. This meditation refuge is the defining meditation of Buddhism, basically. So I'm just going to teach this meditation on refuge, and of course, take it however is most beneficial. The most of these meditations in the Lam Rim, they emphasize building our mental strength and determination, which is interesting because normally people think about meditation as like a relaxation exercise. Meditation is many things, right? And really meditation, but this building mental strength through meditation is actually more part of this practice of building ethical discipline, right? Building a strong mind that sets our determination to do or to not do something and then carries it out. And so when people are meditating, what meditation is really, it's a very refined kind of control over the mind. Like, I'm going to focus on this, I'm not going to focus on anything else. So it's actually just a more refined version of general purpose discipline. I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do that, right? I'm not going to eat, I'm not going to bring a bag of potato chips into bed with me. I did that once, I'm never going to, it's not a good idea. Like, you make a determination, you uphold it. And at the extreme, this is the practice, not extreme, but this is also the practice of ethics. This is just our ability to set an intention and carry it out. There are many disciplines that we need in the course of our spiritual life. And discipline in general is a way of avoiding getting ourselves into trouble. There's avoiding getting yourself into social trouble, like going to prison or being humiliated in a job or something like that. But then there is just the discipline of watching what our mind is doing and watching our speech. There's things like lying, for example, that aren't usually going to get you thrown in prison, but are just not the way we want to conduct our lives, right? So determination, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be straightforward, transparent, honest, even if it's something that's unflattering to me. That's a determination and a discipline. It's a kind of ethics. So you wouldn't have the practice of ethics at all if it was just easy and automatic. If it was easy and automatic, and there wouldn't be any need to even teach this. The practice of ethics exists as a practice because sometimes there are situations that tempt us to do something that at other times we would recognize as a bad idea. And so at times when we are more clear-headed, we make a decision, I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do that, and we carry that out even if we get tired, distracted, tempted by something else. And that's the essence of discipline and building mental strength. If you can do that, meditation comes relatively easily. Refuge practice, building inner protection. Refuge practice is a discipline or a determination to seek refuge or protection, not from outer things principally, but seek refuge and protection inside the mind. Seek refuge and protection really on a profound level. Right now it's raining. I was briefly outside, quickly went back inside, seeking refuge from the rain. I didn't want to be cold, didn't want my feet to be wet, didn't want to get rained on, seeking refuge. We eat to seek refuge from hunger. We spend time with friends to seek refuge from loneliness. We're seeking refuge all the time. None of these things are the meditation on refuge. Meditation on refuge is seeking refuge, seeking protection in the deepest sense. The main thing we need to seek refuge from is death. We are always, we are always on some level in our mind aware that death is certain and death could come. And so all the other things we do, they're mostly to avoid death, right? Eating, looking both ways before crossing the street, having a job, having a house. If none of these things could cause us pain or death and so forth, we wouldn't, our life would be very different. So it was, in human society broadly, because people fear death, then they try to acquire land, try to acquire resources. If they're afraid that another country might attack them, they try to develop weapons and methods of warfare to defend themselves from the other country. And so on a small scale, on a great scale, our human fear of death is just very, very deep. It comes from this basic it's very deep motivation. Now, here's the thing about death. We normally think it's an external phenomenon, but when we talk about death, what we're really trying to become free from is the suffering of death. And because I've already said this is a Buddhist meditation, in the Buddhist tradition, we talk mostly about these 4 sufferings, sometimes 7, but birth, aging, sickness, death. And then the remaining 3 are having to part with what we like, having to encounter what we do not like, and failing to satisfy our desires. That's the long list. Death is the short list. The longer list is birth, aging, sickness, death, having to part with what we like, having to encounter what we don't like, and failing to satisfy our desires. All of our sufferings and problems can be grouped into those 7. Now, if I ask you, suffering, is that outside or inside the mind? Suffering. So can you see suffering? Is it a physical thing? Can you bottle suffering? Suffering, by definition, it exists inside the mind. So when we're talking about sufferings of not getting what we want, having to experience what we don't want, death, all these kinds of things, we're talking about things that exist inside the mind. These fears, pains, risks, all of these things exist in the space of our mind. That's not all of these things exist inside this space of our mind. In fact, the entire world that you're experiencing exists inside the space of your mind. I am right now in your mind, as we said yesterday. Like you think you're seeing me, you're not seeing me. You're seeing pixels on the screen. But you're not even seeing pixels on the screen. It's really the stimulation on the back of your retina. It's really some activity in your brain. This whole experience, you can't actually separate outer from inner. It's all one system. Outer, inner, it's all one system. So seeking refuge from death. Now, here's the tricky thing. You can't not die. We all die. But what does it mean to seek refuge from death? All we're doing is we're postponing the inevitable. From one point of view, it's like we all have a death sentence. We just don't know when. We're on death row, all of us. We just don't know exactly when. I remember seeing a very beautiful, dramatic, movie about somebody who is, or a group of people who are on death row, and just the constant fear that they lived in. Um, Now, what's interesting is that we're in the same situation, but part of our mind is denying that we're in that situation. While meanwhile, another part of our mind knows we're in that situation. So there's a bit of cognitive dissonance. Part of our mind knows we'll definitely die. Part of our mind doesn't want to think about it. And so we watch TV and we do all this stuff that allows us to not worry about death because we have no idea what to do about that. This is called a big problem, a really big psychological problem. We have no idea what to do with that knowledge. We have no idea how to hold that knowledge that we're definitely going to die and not be miserable and afraid. It causes us suffering. Refuge practice is a practice of determining to find inner protection for the mind. And inner protection means protection from suffering. It doesn't mean that we will not die in any ordinary sense of the word, but it means that our mind will be at peace no matter what happens. And that is the meaning of refuge. Seeking and determining to seek and build an inner protection for the mind that is so solid, so resolute, so versatile, that no matter what happens to us, we'll be okay. And that's priceless. That is the most valuable thing that you could possibly have, because you can't actually, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can't buy protection from death. You can't buy protection from loneliness. You can't buy protection from fear, from suffering, right? Those things are going to come. Whether you live in a massive mansion or a tiny hut, all of those things are going to come, right? So there is nothing more valuable. Value, right, just means something that solves a problem or brings us happiness. There's nothing more valuable than the ability to solve our own problem of fear, pain, suffering, and in its place to bring happiness and peace and joy. Nothing more valuable than that. And so what is it that we turn to for refuge is what's known as the three jewels. This is the Buddhist part of the talk, the three jewels. Now, what's a jewel? A jewel is a rock that people hold to be enormously valuable. It's something that when you look at it might just be a rock, might just look like a rock, right? But for some reason, for whatever reason, people realize that this has enormous potential, enormous value. So the experience of inner peace, if someone sees a peaceful, first of all, the experience of inner peace is invisible. If someone sees, the experience of inner peace is invisible. There's two categories of people who possess inner peace. People who possess some inner peace and people who possess complete inner peace. It's two categories. Therefore, these three together. So, and when we talk about inner peace, of course, there's different levels of distinction, but this inner peace is referred to as Dharma. And Dharma literally means, the word means kind of to hold back, means to protect, to hold us back, or to protect us from suffering. So the Dharma Jewel is an inner realization of peace that is, on some level, you're never going to lose. You're a little bit permanently, or a little bit more peaceful, just on an ongoing. You have gained some level of unshakable inner peace. Maybe that's a good way to describe it. We all have peace that comes and goes when things are going well, but through training our mind, through getting to know the real nature of our mind, we can develop these Dharma jewels in our mind. And when we do, we become what's called in the Buddhist tradition a Sangha jewel. Sangha jewel literally means spiritual community. but the meaning is really someone who has at least some profoundly stable experience of inner peace. Someone who has completely transformed their mind such that they're really free from these sufferings. No matter what happens to them, their mind remains at peace and completely free. That person is called a Buddha. And so Dharma, Sangha, Buddha, normally we say Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha in that order. That's the meaning. And these three are called the three jewels. So 2,600 years ago, when Buddha Shakyamuni appeared, taught, gained his realizations, appeared, taught, he built a community around him. And that community that he gathered around him was referred to as the Sangha. So Sangha is often also a term for spiritual community. But the people who are gathered, and so Sangha is often a term for spiritual community. Buddha, seen as the center of community, but really he saw himself as just another member, just another person in that community. Totally humble. This community, Buddha and his Sangha, this community, they were basically homeless people. It was very common in India at that time to have homeless, wandering ascetics. The traditional word for an ordained person was bhikkhu, which literally is the same root as the meaning beggar. Bhikkhu or beggar. Literally, they have no home. They don't hold money. They don't accumulate possessions and so forth. And to get their food, they rely upon the local community, making a procession into town each day with begging bowls to receive food that sustains them for that day. And so they're living in this very profound, very delicate interdependence with the surrounding community. Those are the traditional communities. So this idea of a jewel, right? Jewel is a rock that doesn't necessarily seem to have value, but is in fact the most valuable, at least traditionally, the most valuable thing you could possibly imagine, a jewel. Who on earth would be attracted to live in a homeless community voluntarily like that? Why would anyone see that as a desirable place to go? On the surface, it doesn't look like it's a valuable experience, right? On the surface, it looks like most undesirable. Like, why would you voluntarily give up comfort and comfortable life, a home, live exposed to the elements? Why would you do that? Only if you had found something more valuable. Only if you'd realize something that's even more valuable, even more precious, even more provides even more protection than a roof over your head, even more protection than a stable source of food, even more protection than money and so forth. And that's why these are referred to as jewels, these three jewels. In particular, Dharma Jewel, this inner realization, it is the most precious experience we can have because it literally protects our mind. So the fact that you are coming back to these classes optimistically for me indicates that you're receiving some benefit from these classes. That in some way, these classes, these teachings, which are just words, really, just words, and a community that can maybe provide some inspiration or encouragement. But something here is opening something up in your mind that is better than not having it. For example, that's better than not having it. It's unlocking some greater experience of peace or resilience or happiness in your mind. That is a Dharma jewel. You already have Dharma jewels. We are already a Sangha. You didn't know that, right? You didn't maybe know that. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. We're already a Sangha. From a more casual point of view, you don't have to be a beggar, right? To be a Sangha. Of course not. You don't have to be a beggar to have these realizations. You've already got them. The question is, do we really cherish and appreciate these realizations that we've gotten? What's interesting is that I know that I take for granted some of the experiences of inner peace that I've had, right? Some insights. I'll learn something and I'll think, oh, this is wonderful. I never want to forget this. I never want to forget this realization, right? I really want to embed this deeply in my mind. I really want to change my life and hold this realization. So gratitude, for example, great realization, right? I go in and out of feeling enormously grateful for my coworkers, um, for the people, the company that supports me, right? Sometimes less, sometimes more, right? But every time I have that realization of gratitude, I think this is how I want to abide. I want to abide with deep gratitude for all the people that I'm with. The more I appreciate that state of mind, the more I'm cherishing that inner realization, the more I'm determined to not lose that state of mind, the more I'm going for refuge. And that's the meaning of refuge practice. And that's why I say it's a discipline. Where you're finding insights in your mind, where you're finding states of peace, where you're reading something that's touching your mind, or engaging with someone and talking about a topic that's really moving your mind, moving your heart, the determination to hold that and to deepen it, and to surround yourself with a community that are good influences for you, and to take inspiration from teachers who move your mind in the beneficial direction. All of that is going for refuge. It's that decision, and and so really, refuge practice is about appreciating these inner realizations, the community that is also attracted to these inner realizations, and thus creates a support and connection, and teacher or source of inspiration. Can be a living teacher, can be a historic teacher, right? Even this word religion, like I said at the outset, I always aim to frame these as secular teachings, but this I clearly have to say is a Buddhist teaching, right? But even this word religion, right? What does it mean? From the Latin, I believe it is re, again, ligare, it's like ligament, bind together, binding people together again. Religion, I had was reading, there's a sociologist, Emil Durkheim. I wasn't actually reading his stuff. I was reading the Wikipedia article about him. That's the level of study that I do in these things. But Emil Durkheim said religion is an inseparable aspect of human existence. Even if you don't have a formal traditional religion, everybody always follows some religion. Religion just means that which you hold to be unquestionably valuable. And if it's not something that seems like spiritual, it'll be a football team, right? It's like, oh, you can't criticize the Bears, right? The Chicago Bears, you can't criticize them. They're the best team ever, right? And all my Bears fans agree, right? And so they're, in a sense, that is actually a religious belief, a tribal religious belief around this or that. And so there's a religion around democracy and capitalism or socialism or whatever. Anything that people hold to as precious and where people gather around a central common idea, that is a religion of some kind. That's the broad definition. We need to be gathering around and having a religious sensibility around this experience of inner peace, right? Nobody else is going to save you. Nobody's going to save you from death. There's no external deity or whatever that's going to prevent us from dying. It would be nice if there was. The only protection that we can find, I don't know if it'd be nice if it was, but the only protection that we can find really is building this profound inner peace in the mind. And that's, sorry, that maybe was a little bit too strong, that last statement. I'm not trying to deny that anyway, people may believe or not believe in deities and so forth. And I don't want to, yeah, you know, that's a separate, that that's people's belief, right? But what we know actually works is if you have a peaceful mind, right? So people who believe in deities, they fall in two categories: people who believe in deities and who have an inner experience of inner peace, and people who believe in deities and don't have any experience of inner peace. Those who have an experience of inner peace are happy. They find peace in their hearts. Those who have no experience of inner peace, they're not happy. They don't have peace in their hearts. It is inner peace that is, in fact, most precious and sacred. And so the rituals and the beliefs and the practices that surround religion, supernatural beliefs, and so forth, they are there to create that experience of inner peace. The inner peace itself is the real refuge. Um, and so, yeah, anyway, very long preamble. But okay, so the purpose of this meditation then is to build this determination to seek and to keep building this protection, this inner protection in our mind, of inner peace. And with that, naturally, the conditions that are conducive to that are relying on a community that's also moving that same direction, and relying on inspiration from a teacher who helps us to move in that direction. And this is Refuge Practice. Makes sense. That's a lot, right? But anyway, so that's explaining what this is. So we can engage in a bit of meditation practice on this. And I think from a practical point of view, what we can do, as usual, we start with a breathing meditation, but we can recognize that even a small experience of inner peace through breathing meditation, it's like a small, tiny Dharma Jewel. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. We're not talking about any kind of, fancy, far off, distant realizations. We're talking about taking the wonderful experiences and insights and wisdom that you already have, the compassion, the good heart that you already have, respecting it, giving it the respect it deserves, and through that it'll naturally grow, right? And so this meditation is not about something that's distant and far away. This meditation is about something that's very, very close. It's in fact within our own hearts, just about increasing our respect for that and strengthening that inside. Okay, so as usual, we can find some comfortable position for our meditation. We take a deep breath in and out. Then another breath, and just inviting ourselves to relax. And a third breath, asking ourselves, what is important right now? And we will pay particular attention to this question in our meditation, what is important right now, because we really need to increase our appreciation for the importance of our inner peace and the community that supports it and the teachers that inspire us. But we continue for a while just breathing, becoming aware of our body. Feeling our whole body from the head to the toes. And in particular, feeling our breath. The heart beats about 1 billion times in a lifetime. Every breath and every heartbeat is one step closer to our death. We live in a body that possesses enormous body and mind that possess enormous potential to experience pain and fear. We are fundamentally vulnerable, just like every other living being. Every being is in the same state. Our friends, family, colleagues, those we love. Imagine these beings around us, and we recognize that all of us are vulnerable. None of us are safe in any lasting sense. What we really fear is not something external. What we fear is suffering. We are afraid of something that exists in the mind, only in the mind. We are afraid of suffering that does not exist outside the mind. If what we fear exists within the mind, then the only thing that can protect us must also exist within the mind. And we can briefly reflect on all of the small and large insights we've had, moments of peace, flickers of wisdom, sense of ethics, the inspiration we've derived from teachers who were a good influence, the assistance we've received from spiritual friends, community. We can think there is nothing more valuable than these. These are inner jewels. And it is possible to cultivate these until they become unassailable, indestructible. As we make this decision to build profound inner peace in our hearts, this Dharma Jewel, by relying upon inspiration of wise teachers, the Buddha Jewel, the assistance of our spiritual friends, Sangha Jewel. Every suffering, great and small, exists not outside the mind. The sufferings of death, aging, sickness, loss, experiencing what we do not like, being unable to fulfill our desires. These sufferings all exist inside the mind. Therefore, the only way we can protect ourselves is building this protection inside the mind. And the same holds true for our friends, family, co-workers, everyone in our life. Make a strong determination to build this inner protection and to help others to do the same. And then for the last minute, we can recall that even in this brief time, we have changed our mind. We have built our wisdom, our inner peace, our mental strength, our connections with others. And these are like inner pathways that we are strengthening. And just like small paths through a grassy field, the more we walk through them, the stronger, deeper, more pronounced they become, until they become deep, deep roads that can bring others through the same journey. As we are finding our own way to inner peace, we're preparing the ground to lead others to that same state. Make a decision to carry our determination with us, even as we arise from our meditation and go about our daily lives.